And we are live. Excellent. Right. Let's crack on and get this started. Because I've seen a lot of really, I see this all the time. I've seen a lot of pretty bad nutrition advice this week. Three come to mind. One, that you can't eat fruit and lose weight. Two, that vegetables are poisoning us. And three, possibly the most stupid one, an ex bodybuilder found out that there is sodium in bottled water and basically decided to tell everyone not to drink mineral water. And I mean, it's like the name is the giveaway, but what this obviously leads to is a lot of executives are confused and frustrated because there's endless information out there that makes the process of losing weight, let's get the banner up, and getting in shape challenging. So what we're going to cover today is 3 steps to creating a fat loss food plan for busy executives. I've got 3 steps and a bonus. And what I want is by the end of this pretty short live for you to be able to go away. You probably have to watch it again and just do the steps that I say. If you do these 3 steps, what will happen? Well, this is literally what I'm going to cover in this live is basically the kind of the first thing I have to do with clients. So did it work for Tim? Yes, it did. He was 53 at the time. He's now 60 and is still in great shape. Did it work for Johnny? Yes, it did. As you can see, these are all executives in their late 30s, 40s. Or Tim was in his 50s. Now he's in his 60s. This is Michael, busy business owner, and John, who was 52 at the time and was basically said he wanted a 6-pack and he'd never been able to get one. Here he is 5 months later. Every single one of those, except for Michael, who is late 30s, I believe, 40, 52, 53, busy, they have kids. This works for them and it will work for you. And what I want you to do is I want you to basically just be like a blank slate. Kind of just forget everything you know. Now, am I saying that these 3 steps will get you to achieve this? No, because there is a little bit more that goes into it. But here's the thing, probably a lot of you don't want to be this lean. And 2, my goal really for, especially when clients come into my coaching program, especially if they've spent many years struggling, is just to get some wins, to get them maybe that first kind of 10 kilos. 10 kilos is a really good milestone. For some of you, if you lose 10 kilos, you'll be very happy. For some of you, you might say, right, well, if I can lose 10, I can lose 15. Some of you might have more, like my client Den, for example, had to lose, I think he's lost 35. My client Simon a few years ago lost something like 50 kilos. The point being is it will start with these 3 steps. And I want it to be very simple. I don't want you to overwhelm yourself or confuse yourself. What I find that execs get wrong, and it's not always your fault, like I said, if there are people out there saying that you can't eat fruit, or you can't eat vegetables, and you don't drink mineral water, really with some common sense, we should all take a step back and think that advice is mental. Like, when did we ever was there ever advice I'm trying to think, in the history of kind of weight loss? Fruit, yeah, one of those things that does pop up from time to time. I remember the time when people were saying don't have grapes, that kind of thing. But vegetables and mineral water, that is the world we live in. And for some of you, get very frustrated. Maybe you believe stuff because there's an element of being quite desperate, just wanting to fix a problem. Or like I said, you end up utterly confused, which is what I hear every day. And so the thing that a lot of you guys get wrong from a nutritional point of view, and I've said this a million times and I will continue to say it, is you give yourself too many rules to follow. Things like certain foods are good, certain foods are bad. Fruit, for example, mineral water, vegetables. Or you give yourself like a must eat 6 more meals a day to boost my metabolism. That was a myth that even I believed at one point, but we don't do that anymore. So by giving yourself all these rules to stick to, you make it very rigid and very restrictive. And does it work? Well, of course it works. Is it sustainable? No. Is it sustainable for an executive who has to travel, entertain clients, who needs an element of flexibility? Definitely not. Trying to think if anyone here. I mean, all of these guys here, like Johnny, does a lot of traveling. Tim might come back to him and do a proper case study. He had type 2 diabetes. He was 52. And one of the things he said to me, I wish I could bring it up. I've got a screenshot somewhere. He was that I need to have basically a fry up every morning because I meet prospects and clients Monday to Friday, pretty much 5 days a week for breakfast, where we talk about business and we go, that's how I've grown my business. So that needs to be part of the plan. You couldn't do that if you had a coach or someone said to you, you can't have bread and you can't have a fry up. And then he would be led to this kind of choice of, do I try to do it? And he said to me, I don't want to kind of sit there and have porridge oats and kind of feel a bit awkward in front of clients. That's what a lot of the guys I work with say. It just becomes a bit of a mess. So that's what we want. That's what we get wrong. So let's just forget it all and let's prioritize these 3 steps. They are not rocket science. Everything I say from now on, you could even get ChatGPT to do for you. Step number 1, how much should you eat? When a client comes into my coaching program, the majority of them, 90% or more, their initial goal is to lose body fat. I have to determine how many calories their body requires per day to lose fat while having energy, being able to train, being able to think, being able to, still function as an adult, as an executive, as a father, as a husband. That is important. You will see a lot of things. There is a great example is Slimming World, where there are foods in the Slimming World. Well, it may have changed, but there were foods at one point that were deemed the calories didn't matter. You could eat them. They were something you could eat in unlimited amounts. Granted, some of them were things you probably wouldn't overeat. But if you get hungry on a diet, and you can have things like I think bananas was one of them. It's one of those things you could start to fill yourself up on these foods and stop yourself from losing fat. This is exactly why all these new medications like Ozempic and Wegovy, is that how you pronounce it? Wegovy. This is exactly how they work for the most part. They stop you from eating as much as normal. They control your appetite. They reduce food noise. You eat fewer calories and you lose weight. So step number 1, how many calories do you need for your level of activity, your training? How many steps you're going to do a day? There is a genetic component to this. How old are you? How much do you weigh? That kind of thing. It will be probably more than you realize, but you have to calculate that. That is step number 1. Get that wrong, and you can become the guy who eats healthily, snacks on nuts, has olive oil, avocados, meats, but doesn't lose weight. So don't get that wrong. Step number 1, how many calories do you need? Step number 2, eat enough we'll try that again. Eat enough protein. Couple of reasons for this. 1, it will help you maintain or build muscle. So if you don't want to be skinny fat, if you want to do something like Johnny's a great example. You can see he's got muscle there. Tim's built muscle. You can't really see that Michael built some muscle. John definitely built muscle because there's only about, if I remember rightly, there's only about 4 kilos between him. If you look at his arms and his shoulders and his chest, he has gained muscle while the fat has been lost. Partly this is down to the protein intake. Of course, you have to do the resistance training, but we won't cover that today. Eat enough protein. The other one, or the other reason for this, is that it is very filling. I wish I could bring it up on the screen. I should screenshot it every time I get it. But the most common bit of feedback, complaint, if you will, that clients give me when they first start the coaching program is they'll say, Phil, you want me to eat 2,800 calories. I can only eat 2,000 because I'm stuffed. Why are they stuffed? Well, partly because the protein is higher than they're used to. They're obviously having more fruit and veg, so fiber. They're drinking more. So as a whole, it helps with the protein. Very, very filling. That makes it very, very, I don't want to say makes it very easy, makes it easier to stick to the calories because you aren't going to be starving yourself to death and you aren't going to be constantly thinking about food for the most part. Again, this is why Ozempic and Wegovy and those drugs work well. Protein is like if you don't want to go on one of those medications, if you're on the fence, you're thinking I struggle to lose weight, I'm not convinced I need the medication. Increase your protein. Try that. So that's step number 2. We've got calories and we've got protein. Told you. Very, 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 very simple. Step number 3. Choose your foods. What do I mean by that? Well, we've got 3 macronutrients. We've got protein, we've got fats, and we've got carbohydrates. What I give my clients is a list of foods that are where we want to have the bulk of the diet come from. Protein sources, dairy, whey, protein powders, lean meat, eggs, that kind of thing. Carbohydrates, vegetables, fruit, whole grains, fats, avocado, butter, olive oil. So we've got a little list of foods, and that just becomes your kind of go-to. And that's it. Could probably end it here. We have those 3 steps because we know how many calories we need, we know how much protein. You might be wondering, okay, well, you hasn't mentioned fats or carbohydrates. Well, if there's one thing you can take away from this live is that you don't need to do a low carb diet. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, the carbs have to be low. No, they don't. You've got, if you think of it like a pie chart, you've got a certain amount of calories, like I think of like a budget, and a certain percentage of those calories have gone to your protein. Likely going to be anywhere from probably about 700 to about 1,000 calories. If you've got 2,000 calories, 2,500 calories, the rest of those calories can be used for good fats and carbohydrates. The ratio doesn't overly matter. The reason why I'd learn that, if I were you, is it allows you as an executive to fluctuate the carbohydrates and the fats on a day-to-day basis based on where you're eating or your preferences, your schedule. So one day it's a low carb day, maybe you're in the office and you're not doing as much and it's lower carb, you have more protein and fat. Another day the carbohydrates are higher because you've gone out for a client meal and they've given you, I don't know, pasta, to make it very simple. So there's no step in there where we need to worry about fats and carbs. Don't be extreme with them. Don't make it all fat or all carb, just balance of the 2. That's something you can start to adjust based on what you think is best for you. But for the time being, if you want to make this as simple as possible and you want to drop 5-10 kilos without having to worry about endless things, calories, protein, fill the rest with fats and carbs. Use something like MyFitnessPal. And then from there, very simple. Here's the bonus step. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about 2 meals versus 6 meals. Don't worry about breakfast versus not having breakfast. Don't worry about eating after 6 p.m. I had a phase where I didn't eat carbohydrates after 4 p.m. when I was probably about 23, because I read that in a bodybuilding magazine. Forget all those steps, because if you wake up every day and you think to yourself, I know how many calories I need to eat today, and you know how much protein you need to eat, and you know where those foods are going to come from, and you don't worry about low carb versus high carb, or 3 meals versus 6, or breakfast versus fasting, keto versus high carb, whatever. If you don't worry about those rules or steps, all of a sudden you have a lot more flexibility and freedom. And this is the very reason why, bringing him back up, Tim was able to achieve this while still having his morning fry-ups, which he still does. Now, not only did he do that, because we controlled calories and we controlled fat, even though he was having the fry-ups, not only did he look like that, his main reason was to improve his type 2 diabetes. And he is pretty much has been off of all of his medication since then. I think, if I remember rightly, he still takes a little bit of metformin. But since we did that when he was 53, he's now 60. So over the past 7 years as an executive with kids and having fry-ups every morning, his blood sugars have been in the healthy range. So he is controlling his type 2 diabetes. He's healthier, has more energy. This is a guy that, like I said, he's 60 and he's still crushing it. He's got, several businesses, has a great social life. He's a great example of balance. But you can only do that if you forget about all the rules and you don't worry about rigid structure. It's more of a framework. Calories, protein, fill the rest with fats and carbs. Choose from your list of foods 80, 90% of the time. Fill the rest with foods that you like or the odd drink. It will work. One of my clients, Peter, 58, he's a very busy CEO. Last week went to Dublin. He did 2 days, he had two like strategy days for his business in Dublin. And then they went to watch the rugby at the weekend, and they went drinking in Dublin itself after. We had strategies in place. He knows how to do it. He kept everything good. So although his food intake had to change a little bit, and although he had some alcohol, he still only gained about £1, which you'd expect from having a bit more food. But on average at the moment, he is losing about £2 a week, even though he eats out 2 to 3 times a week for his job. And it really just comes down to these steps. Hopefully that helps. I would like you to watch this again, watch it several times, and just take away that kind of that message that a lot of the stuff that you are worrying about when it comes to creating nutrition plans, especially as an executive who's busy, they don't actually benefit you, and they just make the process harder. If I ask most of you why you haven't got the body or the health or the fitness you want, you will say, I can't be consistent. And a lot of it comes down to doing crappy diets, fad diets, and doing things that don't fit your lifestyle. So forget all the stuff that people talk about. Ignore those people saying that vegetables are poisoning you, or you should stop drinking mineral water because of the sodium, or the doctor that said that fruit will stop you losing weight. It's nonsense. Focus on your calorie control, eat plenty of protein, fill the rest of fats and carbs, make sure your food choices are good 80, 90% of the time. Do that for the next 3 months, come back to me. You will be 8, 10 kilos lighter, maybe a bit less if you start to do some resistance training, which you should, but you will be in a much better place than you are right now, and you won't have worried about all the endless stuff that you normally worry about. When to eat, how much, low carb, high carb, being completely a perfectionist or falling off the wagon. It must be exhausting. Now, obviously, you're a busy executive, so you might be thinking, I don't really have the time to sit there and calculate all this stuff. Can you just help me? That's what I do with clients. They come into my coaching program. The first thing I do is send them back a nutrition plan, a workout plan, bring them into the community so they get everything they need to follow. But importantly, because the factor that I'm not going to talk about in detail here, but the thing that really helps them is the accountability and the strategy. So me and Peter, for example, every Monday we have a call and we talk about his week. So last week we spoke about the Dublin trip. We put into place the strategy. And then when I spoke to him this week, he was like, the reason why that was easier to stick to when I went to Dublin, why everyone else went to breakfast and I went to the gym the next morning, was because I was held accountable. I had to send you photographs. I had to send you my check-in, and I knew we'd have this call, and my pride won't let me speak to you and say that I basically didn't do it. That is the power of accountability. So if you'd like someone to hold you accountable, support you, answer your questions, and just give you all of the strategy so you can just wake up every day and do it, and have someone there to give you a kick up the butt if you don't, because you're too busy to do it for yourself, or you're struggling to stick to it because no one holds you accountable, then either comment below this diet or just send me a private message. We can have a chat. My program might work for you, it might not. So let's determine whether or not I can help you, and we can go from there. Hopefully that's helpful. Regardless, start following those 3 steps and you will be in a better position this summer than you've ever been. And you'll get there in a way that you feel like you can do for the rest of your life, which is, of course, the important part. Take care.